Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know it has been a while, almost a month, and I was absent over here. And I owe you an honest explanation. As you know, I am an artist and I got some projects and deadlines to meet. So life got really busy lately. But I thought about this channel, I thought about chess, and I am back. I will not promise daily videos anymore because I want to be honest with you, but I will promise at least one video every week. So, what's a better way to return to this channel after such a long break is one of the fascinating game of FIDE Candidates 2026. This is a game between two compatriot, the world number 2 and world number 3. So, it's a game between Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura and Grandmaster Fabiano Caruana from the United States of America. And if you have been following this tournament, you know that this is the only game that Hikaru won in the whole tournament. And this was also a very personal game for him, being a same countryman. So let's see that how this game turned out. And please don't forget to stay till the end because this is a long game and you will learn a lot when you will see the end games. The end game here liquidated into rook and pawn endgame, and Nakamura showed superior endgame techniques over 67 moves to grind out a full point from Fabiano Caruana and win this game. So, without a further ado, let's get started. Here, Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura, playing with the white pieces, opens with c4. So he chooses English opening, and Fabiano Caruana replied with c5. So this is going to be a symmetrical variation of English opening. And here the move or the game varies greatly depending on how white chooses to develop. For instance, possible moves for white here are knight c3, knight f3, g3 with the idea of n-catted bishop on g2 square, then e4, which is a Sicilian defense variation, d3, d4 with the early pawn break, then b3, a3, b4, which is wing gambit, and queen c2. So these are the possible continuations which white can play, and game will depend upon what white chooses to play over here. And Hikaru, he went for knight f3. Knight f3 signals that white will try to achieve a favorable pawn break with the d pawn immediately, and black can then try to impede this break and achieve his own immediate d pawn break by capitalizing or capturing the white d pawn with its flank c pawn in the center. Fabi replies with knight c6, and this continues the main line of the symmetrical variation. Hikaru went for d4, going for an early pawn break in the center. Fabi captures the pawn. And now here you can see that black has two central pawns as compared to one central pawn of white, which is a good thing being a black. Now here Hikaru captures the pawn with the knight. Knight f6, knight c3 and e6. So now white usually goes for g3 move here with the idea of n-catted bishop on g2 square. But here Hikaru was well prepared and he went for an unusual but very interesting move, which is bishop f4. Bishop f4 is an interesting move eyeing on c7 square and d6 square. Now here Fabi took around 7 minutes for his next move, and obviously he was out of his preparation because he didn't expected Hikaru to go for bishop f4. So after 7 minutes, Fabi plays d5. Now white captures it with a pawn. Knight captures d5. Knight captures knight. B takes knight. Bishop d2. Here, c6 is an undefended pawn and can become potential weakness for black that white can capitalize on. Bishop b4 by Fabi. Queen a4 played by Hikaru. This move has been played 6 times and all the games were drawn. But it seems like Hikaru had some precise ideas as it hits the bishop and the c6 pawn at the same time. a5 by Fabiano Caruana. This is playable, but the main move here was queen b6, supporting this bishop and the c6 pawn at the same time. But instead, Fabiano Caruana went for a5. e4 by Hikaru. This pawn thrust kicks the knight and it also opens the square for the development of this bishop on f1. Fabi captures the knight with its knight. B into c3. Bishop e7. Black king bishop retreats to e7 square. Bishop e2. Developing the bishop for the castle on the king side. Now you might be wondering, white could have captured the hanging c6 pawn. But after queen takes c6, black would go for bishop d7, queen c4, black castles, bishop e2, rook ac8, attacking the queen, and then simply going for move like queen b3 or anywhere. Like here you can see that black is very well developed as compared to white. White is behind in its piece development. White hasn't castled yet, but black has castled and have a control on the c file. Its pieces are controlling the diagonals. So here white is way behind in the piece development, so this is not a good move. And for this purpose, Hikaru didn't go for the capture of the c6 hanging pawn. Instead, he develops its bishop, king bishop on e2 square to go for kingside castle. So he played bishop e2. Black castles, bishop f4, developing the bishop on an beautiful square, that is f4, which controls a beautiful open diagonal, and this piece activity is just awesome. And then here black plays bishop a6, offering an exchange of bishop, and Hikaru accepts it. Rook takes bishop, rook d1, attacking the queen and grabbing that beautiful d file. Queen b6 and white castles. Despite the fact that the position is quite simple and evaluation bar shows equal, white retains a small pressure along the d file. Queen b5, offering the queen exchange, and Hikaru declines it by going to queen c2. Black here can play rook b6, controlling or adding pressure on this b file and offering queen exchange, or can go for rook a7 for possible pressure by aligning the rooks and this queen if this pawn is pushed forward and controlling or regaining the d file, or black can play queen c4 stopping this c3 pawn advancement. But here Fabiano, he plays bishop c5, and this is a dubious move. He could have played queen c4 stopping the c3 3 pawn promotion. And now, if you see the clock, Hikaru is around 1 hour ahead of Fabiano Caruana, and he took around 40 minutes to play his next move. The possible moves here were a4, queen b3, rook b1, or directly controlling the 7th rank by playing rook d7, rook e1, queen d2, queen d3, advancing this c4 pawn, and after like 30 to 40 minutes of thinking, Hikaru went for c4. And this attacks this queen, so Fabi, he retreats its queen to b7 square. Bishop e5 by Hikaru. Now here, if you look at this position, you will see that black bishop is really active, and white has an advantage that it controls this open d file, and black can never put its rook on b8 square because this diagonal is controlled by white black bishop. So white has an advantage, and it can also bring its rook on the b file to take advantage of this open b file. Even though the pawn structure here is similar for black and white, there are equal number of pawns on both king side and the queen side. This position is complicated. It's not easy. Here, bishop e5 played by Hikaru with the idea of provoking some weakness on the king side. Also, this bishop in the center of the board acts as a legendary shield, hitting on all the diagonals. See how beautifully it is placed in the center. And here, something to note is that black has very stable pawn structure over here, each one supporting each other perfectly. But this bishop can evoke some weakness on the king side. And how white can provoke this weakness, we will see later in the game ahead. Here, Fabi plays queen e7, queen d3 by Hikaru, trying to infiltrate on the 7th rank, f6. And like discussed earlier, Hikaru was able to provoke Caruana to push pawn on king side to create weakness. Now, the 7th rank is prone to attack, and this g7 square is a weakness. So here, Hikaru plays bishop d6, attacking the queen, and Fabi has to capture it, so he goes for bishop capture bishop. Queen captures bishop, and Fabi takes the queen. Rook captures the queen. Now, this pawn is a weakness. This pawn is pinned, and black will lose its one pawn at least and will be pawned down, and it's an endgame already. Black goes for rook b8. Caruana sacrifices a pawn because the passive play for him is no longer working. So instead of protecting his pawn, he went for grabbing this b file. And Hikaru, he just simply captures the e6 pawn. If you're getting a pawn for free, then why not to capture it? Rook b2, as Fabi sacrifices pawn for its piece activity, and he grabs the 2nd rank by playing rook b2, rook e7. This move cuts the black king on the back rank, and white can now bring the other rook into the play by placing it on the d file and aiming for back rank checkmate. Rook a b6 by Fabiano. Rook a7, attacking the a5 pawn. This move is a very important move as of here, otherwise there is a mate in 3. If white played rook d1 immediately. Can you guess how? While I give you couple of seconds. Okay, so here if instead of playing rook a7 by white, if he would have went for rook d1, then black would sacrifice its rook by playing rook d2 and white has to capture it, otherwise there will be a checkmate. So rook takes rook and rook b1, rook d1 stopping the check, and rook captures rook, and this is a checkmate. So for this reason, rook a7 was a really important move and very quick move to be forgotten, or one can do a mistake over here. Now black goes for rook captures a2 pawn. Now here again white can play rook d1 to stack the rooks on the 7th rank and back rank mate, but black will again sacrifice its rook for a back rank mate. So here Hikaru went for a very principal and important move, h3, opening the king from any back rank checkmate threats. h5 by Fabiano Caruana. It's really hard to find correct way, and with h5, which is a blunder on board, Fabi is losing. Here the correct way to hold the game for a draw was rook a b2, with the idea that if rook takes a5, rook b7, black now has controlled and saved its 7th rank from any white potential threats. So instead of this move, Fabi he played h5, which is a blunder. Now Hikaru went for rook d1 with the idea of setting the rook battery on the 7th rank. Rook b2 by Fabiano Caruana, aligning its rooks on the 2nd rank, and it looks like everything is nice and in control by black by bringing the rooks on the 2nd rank. But here is what Fabi missed, a very tricky tactic which we will see soon. Can you guess the next move for white here, which Fabi missed out, while I give you a couple of seconds? Okay, so the right move for here as a white is rook d8 check. An important check. I think Fabiano Caruana calculated rook d2 instead, and he didn't understand this difference. Like here, he might have got confused and have calculated only for rook d2. Sorry, rook d7, rook into f2, rook takes f7 check, king f8, and this is a draw position. But he missed out on rook d8 move. So this was an important check by Hikaru. King h7, rook d7, rook takes f2, rook takes g7 check, king h8. If here black plays king h6 instead of king h8, white idea is going for h4 and then f5 by black, and white will simply push the e pawn. f4, then rook h7 check, king g6, rook g7 check, king f5 by black, and rook captures the pawn with a check on h5 square, king marches to e4, and white will simply push the pawn, and with the two rooks and this passed e6 pawn, this is a completely winning position for white. So here Fabi he went for king h8, rook h7 check by Hikaru, king g8. Here tell me which rook to play by white. Is it rook a g7, or is it rook h g7 check, which rook to choose, this one or this one, while I give you couple of seconds. Okay, so the right move is rook a g7. If here white plays rook h g7, then see the evaluation bar drop in the favor of black. How? Let me show you that why this is a wrong move. Because now the position is like not equal, but still it's playable. Here black can go for king f8, then rook g f7 check, king g8, rook g7 check, king f8, c5 push, rook a c2 attacking the c pawn, rook g f7 check, king g8, rook g7 check, and as you can see, like here evaluation bar is completely equal and this is going to be a technically draw game. So here the right continuation was rook a g7 check, which Hikaru didn't miss out at all. And after this move, Fabi plays king f8, then Hikaru went for rook f7 check, king g8, rook h g7 check, king h8, rook g6. See here that how Hikaru's rook create a perpetual king hunting sequence, driving the black king into the corner. Now, Fabi plays rook f4, rook f cross f6, and here black is down a pawn. And now it's over. Rook captures rook, rook takes rook, king g7, rook takes c6, and white has 4 pawns, black has only 2 pawns. Here Fabi plays rook c2, which is not a good move. He could have gone for a4, which was much better than playing this rook c2. And now Hikaru goes for rook c5, attacking this pawn and the h5 pawn, king g6, rook captures the a5 pawn, Nakamura wins the a5 pawn. Now white has a massive pawn majority. Rook takes c4, rook e5 by Hikaru, h4 by Fabi, and now white simply has to bring its king forward in the game, and Hikaru went for king f2, rook c2 check, king f3, rook c3 check, king g4, rook g3 check, and Hikaru captures the h4 pawn. He gives up the g pawn for an h4 pawn. Rook captures the g pawn. After this pawn capture, white has 2 pawns and rook versus 1 rook of black. Rook f5, blocking any escape for the black king and controlling this f file. Rook g1, rook f4, rook a1, king g3, king g1 check, king f3. Nakamura's king constantly improves and is always active, always supporting the pawn. Now rook f1 check by Fabi, king e3, rook e1 check, king d4, rook a1, rook f5. White rook is constantly cutting off the black king and supporting the pawn advances. And this rook is really active. Rook h1, attacking the h3 pawn, rook f3, supporting its h3 pawn, rook a1, h4, advancing the h4 pawn forward, rook a4 check, king e5. Just look at this white king, how beautifully it hides behind the pawn to save itself from constant checks by black rook and also supports the advancement of pawn. How beautifully white king, rook and pawns are coordinated together. Rook a5 check, king f4, and king just slides behind or beside the pawn and saves itself from further checks. Rook h5 attacking the h4 pawn, king g4 supporting the h4 pawn, rook e5 attacking the e4 pawn, and white plays rook f4 supporting the e4 pawn. And just look at how beautifully white pieces are aligned on this fourth rank, cutting the black king from advancing any further, and this rook just blocks the black king. These are the squares on which black cannot move. And then here Fabi plays king h6, king f3, king g6, king e3, rook a5, rook g4 check, king f6, rook g5. Here, if Fabi goes for the rook captures, then white will simply capture the rook with its pawn, king will take the pawn, then king d4, king f6, king d5, king e7, king e5 taking the opposition. As you know the endgames, king d7, king f6, king d6, king d8, king f7, and now king d7, and this e pawn is going to be a queen. So instead of going for rook exchange, here Fabi goes for rook a1, rook f5 check, king g6, and here white king will again just go for this maneuver, and white rook is cutting the black king from any further advancement and is beautifully supported by e4 pawn, h5 check, king h6, e5, and this is at move 67 that Fabi resigns, because once white starts pushing this e pawn up the board and use its king, then there is no way black can stop it. So this was all from my side, and thank you so much. And like I promised, I won't promise daily videos anymore, but I will definitely put on at least one video per week. Thank you for supporting. Take care. Bye bye.